At the Iraq-Iran border crossing on a hot July day in 1953, Kermit Roosevelt was smoking and preparing for his grand adventure. As the grandson of President Theodore Roosevelt, he wanted to do something to honor his family name. The passport officer noted the scar on his forehead as Mr. Scar, which he took as a good sign. Because once he entered Iran, he would use the name James Lockridge. The CIA had given him a very special mission to change the Iranian government. This wasn't just an adventure, it was an operation that would change history. When Tehran's tall buildings and minarets appeared on the horizon, Kermit felt excitement. The city was colorful and vibrant. Red flyers were everywhere. He had made them. The first phase of Operation Ajax was to control the media. Prime Minister Mossadegh was the most popular leader in Iranian history, but Kermit had managed to portray him as an enemy of the people. Bribing journalists had been easier than he thought. Now every newspaper was writing articles against Mossadegh. Kermit smiled as he walked down the street. The plan was working perfectly. Kermit followed the same routine every morning: newspaper stand, coffee shop, park. Behind this ordinary-looking routine was a big plan. Today, he would meet with a mullah. Pretending to look at shirts in the store, he secretly gave the mullah an envelope. There was a lot of money in the envelope. In return, the mullah would give a sermon accusing Mossadegh of irreligion. Kermit had very valuable assets. Street gang leaders, journalists, religious leaders. They all worked for him. Phase 2 had begun. It was time to create chaos. At midnight, Kermit hid under a blanket in the back seat of the car. His heart was beating fast as they passed through the palace gates. Shah Reza Pahlavi was a young and indecisive leader. Kermit would tell him to dismiss Mossadegh from office. The first meeting was difficult. The Shah was very scared. But Kermit didn't give up. They met every night. Every night he tried to convince him. Mossadegh will remove you from your throne, he said. The royal family will become poor. Finally, the Shah gave in. He would sign the paper dismissing Mossadegh the next morning. Kermit was one step closer to making history. On the night of August 15th, 1953, Colonel Nasiri set out to deliver the documents signed by the Shah to Mossadegh. The plan was simple. They would arrest Mossadegh and take control of the country. But Mossadegh knew everything. When the colonel reached the door, soldiers were waiting for him. Nasiri was arrested. The coup failed. The Shah fled to Rome in fear. The CIA sent Kermit a message from Washington. Return immediately. Kermit was sitting in his office, listening to the news on the radio. Coup failed, the announcer said. Kermit finished his drink and laughed, because he wasn't finished yet. Kermit refused to give up. He bought a big photocopying machine. It was very new technology at the time. The machine was as big as a refrigerator and made a lot of noise. He photocopied the documents signed by the Shah thousands of times. Then he had these documents posted all over the city. The newspapers wrote, "The coup was Mossadegh's doing." Of course, this was a lie. Kermit called two gang leaders. "I'll give you $50,000, he said. "But if you refuse, I'll have you killed." The gang leaders accepted. The streets would be chaotic the next day. Kermit had initiated the second phase of his plan. On the morning of August 17th, people from the gang neighborhoods of South Tehran took to the streets. "Let the Shah stay in Rome!" they shouted. But this wasn't a real protest. It was a fake demonstration that Kermit had paid for. Mossadegh supporters also joined because they thought anti-Shah slogans were being chanted. By noon, thousands of people had gathered in Parliament Square. They pulled down the Shah's statue on horseback with chains. The statue shattered when it hit the ground. The announcer was broadcasting live on the radio. Kermit was sitting in his office listening and smiling. This phase of the plan was also successful. The next day, the same gang members took to the streets, but this time they chanted different slogans. I love Mossadegh. I want communism. At the same time, they were looting shops and shooting at windows. They were beating innocent people. Iranians were confused by this terrible sight. Mossadegh went on television and called on his supporters not to protest. Wednesday morning saw the strangest sight. Weightlifters and acrobats were marching, shouting, "Long live the Shah!" They were wearing only loincloths. They were lifting barbells. Kermit knew this sight was ridiculous, but it would work. On August 19th, pro-Shah demonstrators marched towards Mossadegh's house. On the way, they set fire to 8 government buildings. They also burned 3 newspaper offices. Kermit could see the smoke from his command center, and it made him happy. Mossadegh supporters counterattacked. Clashes began. Gunshots were heard. When the mob reached Mossadegh's house, 300 Iranians had died. The demonstrators stormed the house and stole belongings. They searched Mossadegh's bedroom, but he had escaped. Kermit was listening to the radio while eating lunch. The sound cut out. A new voice came. The Mossadegh government has been defeated. Mission accomplished? A few days later, the Shah returned from Rome. They met with Kermit at the palace at midnight. They no longer needed to hide. The Shah raised his glass. This success belongs to God, but my people owe you, he said. Kermit smiled, sipping his vodka. He had finally succeeded. Mossadegh was arrested and sentenced to house arrest. A new government was formed. Policies closer to America were promised. The CIA saw Operation Ajax as a great success. This operation would become a template for future coup plans. Kermit had kept his grandfather's name alive and made history. 25 years later, in 1979, young Iranian students stormed the American embassy. They held 90 Americans hostage for 444 days. This event caused President Carter to lose the election. Why were they so angry? Because the 1953 coup was still fresh in memory. Mossadegh was Iran's last democratic leader. The government that came after him was tyrannical. Iranians fought for freedom, but the result was dictatorship again. Ayatollah Khomeini came to power. Iran-America hostility began like this. Kermit's success had actually led to the destabilization of the region. Kermit Roosevelt wanted to honor his grandfather's name. His grandfather, Theodore Roosevelt, had won the Nobel Peace Prize. But Kermit's legacy was different. He was remembered as the man who made Iranians enemies of America for generations. Operation Ajax was a success for the CIA, but destroyed Iran-America relations. Many problems in the Middle East stem from this operation. Sometimes history teaches bitter lessons. A 27-day operation can lead to 70 years of hostility. Kermit thought he had experienced a great adventure, but he had actually created a great tragedy. This story shows us short-term successes can lead to long-term disasters.